De ce să suportăm atâtea crize, prețuri mari și lipsuri? Din cauza războiului din Ucraina? Nu este războiul nostru. Merită democrația atâta bătaie de cap? Astfel de lucruri sunt repetate tot mai vocal în toată Uniunea Europeană. Cine rostogolește total irresponsabil astfel de mesaje nu face decât să adâncească pericolul reprezentat de Rusia. De ce amenințarea vine de acolo? Pentru că Vladimir Putin este cel care a început războiul cu ucrainenii și tot el vrea ca Europa de Est să îi se supună. Cei care își amintesc îngrijorați pe bună dreptate de traiul din comunism trebuie să fie mai atenți la cine propune de fapt acest stil de viață. Discutăm în detaliu aceste subiecte cu Peer Gebauer, ambasadorul Germaniei la București. Sunt Cristina Cileacu, începe Pașaport diplomatic. Peer Gebauer, Ambassador of Germany, welcome to Diplomatic Passport.
Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Războiul din Ucraina se prelungește. Dacă pe front lucrurile sunt grave în continuare, în restul lumii încep să se audă tot mai tare vocile care spun: nu este lupta noastră, începeți negocieri de pace cu rușii, avem nevoie de gazul rusesc și așa mai departe. O Rusie învingătoare în conflictul pe care l-a început în Ucraina înseamnă un singur lucru: pericol constant de securitate pentru toată Europa. Dacă Rusia câștigă în Ucraina, de ce nu și-ar pune în practică și amenințările împotriva României, de exemplu? Realitatea arată că ucrainenii sprijiniți de vest pot face față unui agresor de proporții, iar cel mai surprins de acest fapt este chiar Vladimir Putin. A declarat mobilizare parțială a cetățenilor ruși și a provocat un exod al propriului popor spre alte state. Rusia devine astfel prima țară ai cărei cetățenii fug nu din calea unei invazii, ci pentru că liderul lor a provocat o invazie.
Ukraine united Europe, but this unity seems to be cracking right now. And the question is, because we have so many crises that each country is feeling, but in a different way, how is Germany going to cope with this crisis?
Let me say, first of all, you're right. Europe managed very well to stay together in this crisis, and I think that's something that also came as a surprise to Russia and to Putin. So that's first of all good news that we managed to stay together. As a European Union, we are a group of countries that of course have the right to speak up, and it's natural that every country has its own voice and its own individual situation. So I think the discussions you will see also at this stage about the various aspects of our reaction, whether it's sanctions or others, I think the variety of voices is not something very unique. It's something that's part of our DNA, and we have always managed to find common solutions, and I think that's what we need to strive for also in this time and in the future. Germany is of course facing the same challenges as all the other European countries when it comes to rising energy prices and how to cope with it in order to protect our consumers and our economy. Of course, we are in a constant need of adapting our support for Ukraine, and we have beefed up our support, if I may say so, considerably during the last month, which is very, very necessary, and which we will continue to do in the future. Let there be no doubt, this brutal Russian aggression must be stopped, and Ukraine has our full support also in the future to come.
But what if Germany will break at some point in face of this crisis? What do you think it will happen for the rest of the European Union?
I don't see ourselves breaking. When it comes to the economy, there are a lot of challenges, as I've said, and I fully trust that we will be capable, continue to be capable to keep up our economic strength. You're right, in Europe we are interlinked economically, and of course if one country, big country like Germany, would suffer dramatically economically, this will also have an effect on other countries like Romania. But I don't see us there. On the contrary, I think we have been able to show that we are resilient in that sense, and that we will cope with the challenges that are coming. Politically, I don't see us crumbling at all. I think we are very much straight on course. And the recent developments in Russia with the mobilization, these, let's say, measures of despair of the Putin regime have even strengthened our commitment and our resolve in that matter.
Șantajul energetic pe care Putin l-a încercat cu Europa nu a avut efectul așteptat. Europenii s-au repliat și caută alte resurse de gaz în lume, doar că va dura ceva până când continentul se va conecta și fizic la noi furnizori. Oricum, problema începe să se rezolve. Ce face Putin în aceste condiții? Trece la sabotaj și deschide practic un alt front de luptă. 3 scurgeri de gaz din conductele Nord Stream 1 și 2, care trec pe sub Marea Baltică, au avut loc în această săptămână. Încă nu este dovedit că rușii sunt vinovați, dar toate indiciile merg în această direcție. Europa își descoperă astfel o altă vulnerabilitate, nu doar protecția infrastructurii sale de transport energetic, cât și a celei de comunicații care trece pe sub ape.
When it comes to the energy crisis, because this is the biggest one we are facing, is Germany having enough gas and oil?
We've done a lot of efforts to manage the challenges that will come with winter time. Of course, a lot will depend, as we all know, about how deep or how tough this winter is going to be, how cold it's going to be. But when you look at the various measures, filling up our gas supplies, we have managed much better than expected. We had a goal of reaching, let's say, 85% by, I think, the beginning of October. We have reached that already a month earlier in filling up our gas supplies in Germany. We have managed to acquire new ways of getting in gas, floating LNG terminals that are about to be put in place. We have made new deals, new treaties with other countries, other suppliers of gas and energy. So we managed quite well to prepare ourselves the best way we can. Of course, there is a lot more to that. It's about beefing up our energy efficiency measures. It's about saving energy, and we do this in Europe, in Germany, and of course continuing our strong commitment to build up our renewable energy resources. And then all of these measures will, I believe, make it possible for us to manage to go through this winter.
Ca întotdeauna când sunt crize, cineva profită și cineva pierde. De cele mai multe ori profită politica și pierd cetățenii. Povara prețurilor este tot mai grea în toată lumea, iar oamenii au toată dreptatea când reclamă lipsa de viziune a liderilor lor. De aceea trebuie să fie atenți când își aleg politicienii. Nu este despre cine vorbește mai tare, ci despre cine vorbește în cunoștință de cauză, pentru că altfel se poate ajunge în situația în care se cade din lac în puț.
In the same time, we have to look at the people, because most of them are losing patience, of course. People start to say, why should we sacrifice for the war in Ukraine? What do you think is the best advice right now for the people that have to face huge bills and a lower standard of living?
You're right. There could be a growing sentiment of people that felt left out if they were just left with rising energy costs. And that's why in Germany, as well as in all other European countries, including in Romania, politics are managing to develop tools to help and support consumers and families, mainly by having limits, ceilings for gas prices, because this will make it feasible for private households to continue to survive economically. Of course, it's up to governments then to finance the gap between the market costs and the gas price ceiling that consumers have to pay. This needs, of course, our commitment to use money, but we are committed to do so, and it's a trend in Germany, or something we will end up in Germany, I'm quite sure, and it's something that's being discussed on a European level in order to have sort of similar measures in that respect in other European countries as well.
But this is also a very fertile field for the populism, and we can see it's on the rise, including in Romania. Do you think the politician will manage really to survive in this situation?
I believe so. We have seen a rise of populist movements, political movements, of course, in many countries, also during the pandemic, but just to give you an example, in Germany, we had elections in last fall and last September, and populist parties actually lost in ground. That was before the war, before rising energy costs, but in a sentiment where people could have been really fed up with all the restrictions due to the corona pandemic. But the contrary turned out. People very well understood in Germany, the majority understood that these populist movements don't offer any answers. They are not there to do things better. They're just there to blame others. And this is a message more and more people understand does not help any. And that's why I believe we are stable, we are safe, and we of course will have discussions, but I don't see our systems to be threatened.
Războiul informațional este singurul front unde Rusia pare să câștige teren în lume, dar pierde la ea acasă. Rușii repetă și propagă mesajele care acuză vestul de tot răul pe care de fapt Rusia îl provoacă, iar vestul încă nu găsește cea mai bună cale să contracareze eficient această comunicare viciată. Paradoxal, propaganda lui Putin nu reușește să mai convingă proprii cetățeni. Rușii nu vor să își susțină liderul în războiul fără sens, aleg să fugă din țară, iar cei care sunt luați cu arcanul în armată ca să fie trimiși pe front, refuză să lupte.
Russian propaganda in the same time is very powerful, although European Union is trying to fight against it, but it looks like the methods are not very successful. What is Germany's reaction in this case? Is your country having a specific strategy comparing, let's say, with the other countries of EU? Is better in the case of Germany?
I don't know if we have a better strategy. We are, of course, closely liaising and exchanging with our European partners on the best approach. And you're right, this is a challenge. We have to be better in meeting. How do we do it? We, of course, put a much more emphasis on communicating ourselves, on exactly pinpointing down fake news spread by Russia, in presenting the facts. I think this is key to any effort to counter fake news, that you present clearly the facts of what is happening. We have seen this phenomenon, for example, in the case of the restricted or hindered grain exports from Ukraine. Russia blocking Black Sea grain exports and then blaming Ukraine or the West for hunger in the world. Obviously, it's complete a fairy tale they are presenting there. So the only way to approach this is by countering it very actively and making sure that we send out our message. Of course, we also have to watch out how Russia is misusing the freedoms we are offering our societies. There are fake news factories like Russia Today that are simply, spreading Kremlin's word. And of course, it's right to restrict their air and their ability to spread the fake news in Europe.
On the other hand, we do see, or we do feel, I should say, rather correct, that blaming Ukraine is increasing. I'm talking about the level of the common people. Helping Ukraine is the right solution. How do you feel it?
You're right. There is, of course, with some people, the sentiment that why would we have to support Ukraine? It's not my war. It's far away. You hear this in Romania, in Germany, in other parts of the world. But again, I sense that the large majority of our societies fully understands Russia is the one to blame. And in that sense, the recent developments have, I think, underlined this a better understanding of the reality. You see how desperate Putin has become in mobilizing people, in lying to his people, saying, well, we only draft people with military or men with military experience. Contrary is true, he's drafting anybody. You see nuclear threats thrown out by Russia, by Medvedev. And so I think people realize not supporting Ukraine, giving up Ukraine would not lead to more security, but it would lead to less security. It would lead to us being directly threatened even more. So I think the majority better understands than we sometimes feel. This does not mean that we can lay back and say we don't have to do anything. Communication is key, making sure that the truth and the facts are heard. This is the job of politics these days. But again, I don't see us failing in that effort.
How shall we treat Russia? Because if we take the examples of your country, we have, of course, on one hand, the Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, that is, let's say, less present in the eyes of media and with a lower tone of the voice. And on the other hand, we have your Minister of Foreign Affairs, a woman, Annalena Baerbock. She's more vocal, more direct. Which is the best way to react in front of Russia?
I wouldn't say that there are differences in substance. Of course, every personality is different, but both stand for a very clear course of supporting Ukraine and not wavering in that regard.
No, that's clear, but on the long term, how shall we deal with Russia?
In terms of, you're fully right, and it's an important question, how can we deal with Russia? I would love to be in a situation where there was room for diplomacy and for trying to find a way forward. Unfortunately, this time is not here. I'm sure it will come at some stage, but right now the only message that Putin understands, that Russia understands, is a message of strength, a message of you will not win this war, you will lose this war. And I think once this message fully sinks in, and I think it's beginning to sink in Russia already, otherwise these desperate measures would not have been, thinkable. The minute Russia fully understands, there might be room again for addressing Russia in a different way. But it's not for us to decide. It's something where we have to stay steadfast in our support, in our military support for Ukraine, and that's what we do. In terms of, again, of style and of how to address this, I wouldn't see, really, as I said, any difference there. I think it's part of a democratic system that there are several voices and several voices can be heard. And again, we are full in sync in our government when it comes to the substance of support for Ukraine.
And is the European Union full in sync when it comes to how to deal with Russia? Because if we look in the eastern part or the Baltic side, people are preferring not to talk to Russia at all and to treat them in a very direct way. And on the other hand, in the western part of the EU, we see, let's say, much more diplomacy and much more attention when it comes to deal with Russia.
You're right, there are differences in the approach of how to best deal with Russia and the challenges ahead of us. I always consider it to be a strength of the European Union that these different voices can be expressed. We are not an autocratic system where one person or one group of persons decides and nobody else can say a word. So it's natural that in a discussion that is also led openly, because that's what we are a transparent, open, democratic system, you will hear different voices. I always understand, for example, our Baltic friends and Poland, in their approach, also with their specific experiences with Russia, and it's, in my view, very important to closely listen to what they have to say and then find a common ground, and I think this is what we are doing.
We are recording this interview prior to Germany Unity Day, which will be on 3rd of October, and this day is mostly about democracy. How shall we stick on democracy in these days?
You're right, German unification is also a cause of democracy in the sense that Germany was reunited in a democratic way. The people in Eastern Germany, as well as in Eastern Europe, like here in Romania, took up to the streets and toppled their communist regimes. So the fall of the Iron Curtain, the fall of the Berlin Wall, is a clear expression for the victory of democracy. We have to protect democracy. It's the best system we can think of, but it's not something we can take for granted. We have to always make sure that we manage to explain the great benefits of democracy to our people, that it might be tempting for some to feel that a more autocratic, strict system would yield better results. But the contrary is true, and we see this in Russia. It's been an autocratic system, and I know some people in Europe might have felt some sort of closeness to this Putin-style politics of just saying, I'm the strongest, I will take the lead and I will manage. But what we see right now, that he's actually not broadening the influence of Russia, he's bringing it down, that he's not strengthening Russia, but he's actually destroying Russia with this approach. And again, that's the strength of our democratic systems. I know people are sometimes questioning democracy for being too slow, too sluggish, you never have a clear decision, always a compromise. This is often being criticized, and I often want to say, no, on the contrary, this is exactly what democracy is all about. We are cooperating in a way that every voice is heard, and that's what's needed. And in that sense, yes, we have to defend democracy.
Is there any sacrifice too big in this defending of democracy?
I don't see any sacrifice being too big. I think we don't have any choice. There's no alternative. We should, if anybody who feels like, well, let's give up these, as I said, sluggish or slow democratic systems for anything better, there is no better system than our democratic system, with all its flaws or with all the aspects you might criticize. But we have learned in Europe the hard way over centuries of non-democratic times that this doesn't lead us anywhere. In the contrary, the minute we chose the path of democracy in Europe, we've had a time of peace and stability within Europe that we, of course, need to protect.
Ambassador Gebauer, thank you so much for this interview, and of course, Happy Unity Day for Germany.
Thank you so much.
Atât pentru astăzi, dar rămânem în continuare online pe pagina de Facebook a emisiunii și pe contul nostru de Twitter. Revenim cu subiecte noi din lumea diplomației și a politicii externe, vinerea viitoare de la 11:30 și reluare sâmbătă după miezul nopții. La revedere!